She was very articulate, not only in art, but on many subjects. She was a very bright lady.
She was one of the richest women in the state of Texas, but she was real simple and real nice.
She was a peculiar-looking woman, really funny. She came to call at 8:30 or 9 in the morning, dressed in a Mexican dress and hat, with a cigarette hanging out of the side of her mouth.
She was jolly. She had a nice laugh. She had a very deep voice, almost like a man's.
She was a very generous, sweet, strange, and lonely lady. I wish I'd gotten to know her better.
Her childhood years were spent in Kansas, in El Dorado, as they say in Kansas, where her father was a doctor for the Santa Fe Railroad. She was an only child, and her parents doted on their daughter. In time, they began to see strong artistic talent in young Jessie. She created this work when she was just 9. In 1893, when she was 10, Jessie's parents took her to the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago. The grand images of art and architecture she saw there no doubt greatly nurtured her love and appreciation of art. When she was 17, her life as an artist began to take form. First, Jessie was selected to attend a special drawing course at the University of Kansas. Then, 3 years later, her to enter the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. While there, she began using her middle and her father in 1905. The stimulating atmosphere of the art scene in Chicago continued to pull at her, and she divided her time between her parents' home and her newfound life in Chicago. Again, in 1911, she returned to the Art Institute to study. In March of 1913, the first modern art exhibition in America, known in New York as the Armory Show, came to the Art Institute. Marion returned again and again to eagerly study the works of Cézanne, Picasso, Gauguin, Pissarro, Van Gogh, and so many others. The next few years, from 1914 to 1917, brought great change to Marion's professional and personal life. She began to share her knowledge and love of art. As the interim art supervisor of Marion, Ohio City Schools, she received a glowing recommendation from her supervisor.
Miss Kugler is one of the best qualified art teachers I have ever known. She teaches art in a manner that arouses and develops the child's observation and enlarges his aesthetic nature.
In 1915, the discovery of oil on her father's property in El Dorado greatly expanded the family's fortune. Her new wealth, combined with her passion for art, would one day enable her to make her mark in the art world. In 1916, Marion more firmly fixed her knowledge and appreciation of modern art when she saw the Forum exhibition of modern American painters at the Anderson Galleries in New York City. There she saw the paintings of artists like John Marin and William Zorak, whose work she would one day own. Later that same year, at age 33, Marion Kugler met the man she would soon marry. Don Denton McNay worked for the Columbus, Delaware and Marion Railway Company. He was shy, handsome, and 23 years old. In December, when Marion visited a friend in Chicago, Don wrote to her.
Dear Marion, as you know, I ain't much of a fellow to put my feelings into words, but in my silent sort of way, I want you to know that I'm awful glad that you'll be home in less than a week. Time never went so slow as the past few weeks have.
Marion and Don were married on December 9, 1917. On their marriage certificate, they would both give their ages as 28. But their honeymoon was cut short. The world was at war. Don was ordered to Army training in Laredo, Texas. It was then that San Antonio became a sentimental landmark in Marion's life. The newlyweds stopped briefly in San Antonio on their way to Laredo. And then, in this modest home, Mr. and Mrs. Don Denton McNay set up housekeeping in the dusty bordered town. But all too soon, Don was ordered to Florida. Marion accompanied Don as far as San Antonio. They stayed at the Menger Hotel until his unit departed. She then returned to her parents' home in Ohio. In 1918, the Spanish flu swept through the country. Hundreds of thousands died. That fall, Don also fell ill, and Marion rushed to Florida to be with him. On October 25, 1918, Don McNay died with his beloved Marion at his side. She had lost the love of her life. Marion took his body back to Ohio for burial and spent the next few weeks recuperating from the flu herself. 26 months later, under her father's influence, Marion married banking executive Charles Newton Phillips, who regularly attended the Presbyterian Church, as did the Kuglers. Overall, this was not a happy time for Marion. Dr. Kugler died in 1921, and Marion filed papers to divorce Phillips. Hoping that earlier happy memories would give her a boost, Marion brought her mother to San Antonio. It worked. Her memories of Don and the relaxed lifestyle of San Antonio revived her. She took up painting again, and she met and married a famous San Antonio ophthalmologist, Dr. Donald T. Atkinson. This union with a sympathetic husband and her own rebirth as an artist lifted Marion's life to a new level. With great energy and purpose, Marion began to build a mansion they would name Sunset Hills, her personal masterpiece, on the 115 acres of farmland owned by Donald Atkinson. Her renewed interest in art and culture led her to acquire significant works of modern art. The first major oil painting she bought was Delfina Flores, purchased following a Diego Rivera exhibition in San Antonio's Whitty Museum. In September 1929, Sunset Hills, designed by San Antonio architects Atlee B. and Robert M. Ayers, was completed. Despite the beginning of the Great Depression, Marion was a generous hostess. In 1932, she hosted the wedding of her cousin, Jessie Lippincott, to Eugene Winkworth at Sunset Hills. Marion's new home was adorned with extravagant floral decorations and a variety of finery for the occasion. She regularly visited Chicago and New York to keep up with modern art as she continued to expand her collection. Unfortunately, Marion's energy for art did not advance her relationship with Donald Atkinson. The Atkinsons divorced in 1936. Marion kept Sunset Hills, her own personal wealth, and her art collection. This time, the divorce decree specifically requested legal permission to return to the name she loved most, Marion Kugler McNay. By the late 1930s, Marion was immersed in the company of artists, both in San Antonio and in the emerging American art world in Taos, New Mexico. On one of her trips to northern New Mexico, Marion met and befriended the Los Angeles art dealer Dalzell Hatfield and his wife Ruth. The Hatfields not only helped with Marion's important art purchases, but they also became lifelong friends and trusted advisors. In July of 1937, in New Mexico, Marion also met and married her fourth husband, the artist Victor Higgins. Higgins moved to San Antonio, and Marion provided him with a studio on the south side of the mansion, but his work lacked strength without the inspiration of the Taos landscape. The marriage between the collector and the talented artist went sour. In 1940, they divorced, and Higgins returned to the Taos artist community. During World War II, Marion learned that the Whitty Museum would have to shut down its art school due to the war effort. She graciously offered the use of Sunset Hills for the students and their art classes, and encouraged them to study her collection for inspiration. In 1942, at an Art Institute board meeting, Marion announced her intention of founding the Art Museum. She then recited a favorite saying of Confucius: "If I had but 2 loaves of bread, I would keep one, and with the other buy a white hyacinth to feed my soul." The gift of her mansion and collection as the first museum of modern art in Texas was her white hyacinth for those who visit the McNay. Throughout the 1940s, she strengthened the collection with new purchases, and she also continued to share it with students and visitors. On April 12, 1990, her generosity fostered more generosity from many others. From Marion's original bequest of several hundred works, the museum has grown to 14,000 works of art. In addition, special touring exhibitions bring many more works of art to McNay visitors, thereby fulfilling her desire to bring the best of modern art to her adopted city and state, and to share her love of art and her beautiful home with future generations.